Chapter 1. The Wounded Stranger. The snow fell in thick, relentless sheets as Alara trudged through the forest path, her worn boots crunching against the frozen ground. The basket of herbs clutched to her chest felt heavier with each step, but she didn't dare stop. Not here, not when darkness was descending so quickly over the thornwood. "Worthless Omega," she muttered, repeating the words that had been hurled at her only hours ago in the village square. The baker's daughter had laughed the loudest, her perfectly manicured hand covering her mouth in mock sympathy. "Why don't you just leave already? No one wants you here." Alara blinked back the sting of tears. She'd lived in Millhaven her entire 23 years, and yet she'd never belonged. Not after her parents died in the fire. Not after the whispers started about her mother's strange knowledge of herbs, her father's peculiar strength. The villagers had tolerated her because she was useful, healing their children's fevers, setting broken bones, growing remedies in her small garden behind the crumbling cottage she called home. But tolerance wasn't acceptance. And tonight, after she'd refused the mayor's son's advances for the third time, that tolerance had finally shattered. A sound pierced through the howling wind, a low, pained whimper that made Alara freeze mid-step. She shouldn't investigate. Every survival instinct screamed at her to keep walking, to reach the safety of her cottage before full dark. The thornwood was dangerous at night. Everyone knew that. Strange creatures roamed these woods, and people who ventured too deep after sunset rarely returned unchanged. But the sound came again, weaker this time, and Alara found her feet changing direction before her mind could protest. She pushed through a dense thicket of evergreens, pine needles catching in her long dark hair, until she emerged into a small clearing. Her breath caught in her throat. A massive wolf lay collapsed in the snow, its silver-gray fur matted with blood. The creature was enormous, far larger than any wolf she'd ever seen in the rare wildlife sketches that passed through the village. Its breathing came in shallow, labored gasps, and even from several feet away, she could see the deep gashes across its flank and shoulder. "Oh no," Alara whispered, her healer's instinct overriding her fear. She approached slowly, hands raised in what she hoped was a calming gesture. "Easy there. I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's eyes cracked open, and Alara stumbled backward. They were amber. Not the yellow gold of a normal wolf, but a deep, burnished amber that seemed to glow with an inner fire. And they were looking at her with an intelligence that was distinctly, unnervingly human. The wolf tried to lift its head, to move away from her, but collapsed back into the snow with a pitiful whine. Fresh blood seeped from its wounds, staining the pristine white ground crimson. Alara made a decision. She dropped to her knees beside the creature, her basket tumbling open to reveal carefully wrapped bundles of herbs, clean cloth, and small glass vials. "I know you probably can't understand me," she said softly, working quickly to assess the wounds. "But I'm going to help you. Just, please don't bite me." The wolf remained still, though those amber eyes tracked her every movement with unsettling focus. The gashes were deep, claw marks, she realized with a chill. Something had attacked this animal with terrible force. She worked methodically, the way her mother had taught her so many years ago. First, she cleaned the wounds with melted snow and a tincture of calendula. Then she applied a poultice of comfrey and yarrow to slow the bleeding and fight infection. The wolf flinched but didn't pull away, almost as if it understood she was trying to help. "You're incredibly well behaved for a wild animal," Alara murmured, as she wrapped clean linen around the worst of the wounds. Her fingers brushed against the wolf's thick fur, and a strange, tingling sensation rushed up her arm. She jerked back, staring at her hand in confusion, but the feeling faded as quickly as it had come. Probably just the cold, she told herself. But when she looked back at the wolf, those amber eyes were watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. "There," she said finally, sitting back on her heels. "That's the best I can do out here. You need rest and warmth, but I can't exactly carry you home." She laughed bitterly at the thought. The creature probably weighed more than she did. The villagers would burn down my cottage if I showed up with a wolf. The wind picked up, sending icy needles of snow against her exposed skin. Alara shivered and pulled her thin cloak tighter. The sun had fully set now, and the forest had transformed into a maze of shadows and moonlight. She should go. She'd done what she could, but when she started to stand, the wolf made a sound. Not a growl, but something closer to a plea. Those amber eyes held hers, and Alara felt something shift deep in her chest, like the turning of a key in a lock she hadn't known existed. "I can't stay," she whispered, even as she found herself settling back down beside the creature. "I'll freeze if I stay out here much longer." The wolf shifted slightly, and before Alara could process what was happening, it had moved closer to her, its massive body curling protectively around her smaller frame. Heat radiated from its fur, despite the injuries, chasing away the brutal cold. Alara knew this was insane. She should run, but exhaustion and something else, something she couldn't name, kept her rooted in place. She let herself lean back against the wolf's warm bulk, her eyelids growing heavy. "Just for a moment," she murmured. "Just until I'm warm enough to make it home." The wolf's breathing had steadied, no longer quite so labored. In the moonlight filtering through the evergreen canopy, she could have sworn its wounds already looked less severe than they had minutes ago. But that was impossible, wasn't it? As sleep began to claim her, Alara felt the strangest sensation, as if invisible threads were weaving themselves between her heart and the creature beside her, binding them together in ways she couldn't begin to understand. In the distance, a howl echoed through the thornwood. The wolf's body tensed, a low growl rumbling through its chest, but it didn't move away from her. If anything, it curled more tightly around her, as if prepared to defend her against whatever dangers lurked in the darkness. Alara's last conscious thought was that she'd never felt safer in her entire life, and that terrified her more than anything. Chapter 2: Morning Revelations. Alara woke to the sensation of warmth and the sound of a heartbeat that wasn't her own. Her eyes flew open, and for a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the memories crashed back. The wounded wolf, the blood in the snow, the impossible decision to stay. She jerked upright, her body stiff from sleeping on the frozen ground, and turned to look at her companion. The wolf was gone. In its place lay a man. Alara's scream caught in her throat, emerging as a strangled gasp. She scrambled backward, her hands slipping on the icy ground until her back hit a tree trunk. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the impossible sight before her. He was naked, partially covered by her cloak, which she didn't remember removing. His body was covered in angry red scars that matched exactly where the wolf's wounds had been, across his ribs, over his shoulder, down his muscular flank. But the injuries that should have been fatal, that should have been still bleeding, looked days old rather than hours. And his face, Alara's breath, caught for an entirely different reason. He was beautiful in a dangerous, wild way, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, and hair the exact silver gray of the wolf's fur. Even unconscious, there was something commanding about him, something that made the air feel heavy with presence. "What are you?" she whispered, though he couldn't hear her, as if in answer. His eyes opened, those same burnished amber eyes that had watched her so intently last night. They stared at each other for a long moment, neither moving. Alara could see the exact instant awareness flooded back into his gaze, watched as his body tensed with the instinct to flee or fight. "Don't move," he said, his voice rough and deep with an accent she couldn't place. "I won't hurt you." "You're naked in the woods after being a wolf last night," Alara said, her voice rising despite her attempt to stay calm. "I think I'm allowed to be a little concerned about who might hurt whom." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. He slowly sat up, keeping her cloak wrapped around his waist, and Alara forced herself not to look away from his eyes. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her flustered, even if she was absolutely, completely flustered. "You saved my life," he said simply. "I owe you a debt that cannot be easily repaid." "You can start by explaining what you are." Alara's hands found a thick branch beside her, and she gripped it like a weapon, even though she knew it would be useless against whatever supernatural strength he possessed. "And why you were dying in the woods." The man's jaw tightened. "That's complicated. I'm a simple village healer who just watched a wolf turn into a man. I think I can handle complicated. He studied her for a long moment, and Alara had the unsettling feeling he was seeing far more than she wanted to reveal. Finally, he spoke. My name is Kale, and yes, I'm what you think I am, a shifter. A werewolf, though we don't use that term. We? Alara's grip tightened on the branch. There are others. Many others. We live hidden among humans, in packs with territories and hierarchies. Kale shifted slightly, wincing as the movement pulled at his healing wounds. The Thornwood and the lands beyond belonged to the Silvercrest pack, or they did until recently. What happened? Kale's expression darkened. A challenge. A betrayal. Someone who wants to take everything I've built and destroy it. He looked away, staring into the forest. They ambushed me during a perimeter patrol. 3 of them against 1. I managed to escape, but barely. Alara's mind was reeling. Werewolves, packs, challenges. It sounded like something from the old stories her mother used to tell. Tales she dismissed as fantasy meant to frighten children into staying close to home. Why should I believe any of this? She asked, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince, him or herself. Kale turned back to her, and his eyes began to glow with that inner amber fire. Because you already do. You felt it last night, didn't you? When you touched me. Alara's breath hitched. The tingling sensation, the feeling of threads weaving between them. She'd tried to dismiss it as imagination, but here in the cold light of morning, she couldn't deny what she'd felt. What was that? She whispered. I don't know. Kale's voice dropped lower, and for the first time she heard uncertainty in it. That's what frightens me. Before Alara could respond, the sound of voices echoed through the forest. Human voices calling her name, Alara! Alara Thorne! She recognized the mayor's son, Marcus, and felt her stomach sink. They'd come looking for her, and if they found her here, with a naked stranger in the woods, the rumors would destroy what little reputation she had left. Kale was on his feet in an instant, moving with inhuman grace despite his injuries. You need to go, now. But I'll be fine. I heal fast. He caught her arm as she started to protest, and that tingling sensation rushed through her again, stronger this time. His eyes widened slightly as if he felt it too. Listen to me carefully, Alara Thorne. What happened here stays between us. If anyone learns what you know, you'll be in danger. From your enemies? From everyone. His grip tightened almost imperceptibly. Humans who know about shifters rarely survive long. Either we silence them, or they become targets for those who would use that knowledge as a weapon. I don't want either fate for you. The voices were getting closer. Alara could hear branches snapping, the search party moving through the undergrowth. There's an abandoned hunting cabin about 2 miles north of here, she said quickly, making a decision that would probably haunt her. Follow the stream until you see a lightning-struck oak, then head east. You can hide there until you're fully healed. Kale stared at her as if she'd sprouted wings. Why would you help me? You don't know me. I could be exactly the monster you fear, because last night, that monster kept me warm when I should have frozen to death. Alara pulled her arm from his grip and grabbed her basket, shoving her scattered herbs back inside. Because whatever you are, you chose not to hurt me when you easily could have. Alara. Marcus's voice was very close now. Go! She hissed at Kale. He hesitated for one more heartbeat, his amber eyes searching her face. Then he nodded once and melted into the forest, moving so silently she might have imagined him. Alara took a deep breath, composed her expression, and turned just as Marcus burst into the clearing with 3 other men from the village. There you are. Marcus's face was flushed with exertion and something that looked like anger. We've been searching all night. Your cottage was empty, and with the wolves howling— I'm fine, Alara interrupted, forcing herself to sound calm. I was gathering night-blooming herbs and lost track of time. I fell asleep under the trees. Marcus's eyes narrowed as he took in her disheveled appearance, the way she clutched her cloak closed. Alone? Of course alone. She met his gaze steadily, praying he couldn't hear the frantic beating of her heart. Who else would be foolish enough to wander the Thornwood after dark? The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but as Marcus finally nodded and gestured for her to follow them back to the village, Alara knew it was the first of many lies she would have to tell. She'd crossed a line last night. She'd entered a world she didn't understand, bound herself to a stranger who was more than human. And somehow, impossibly, she wanted to cross that line again. Chapter 3. Shadows and Secrets. The village felt different when Alara returned, or perhaps she was the one who had changed. She walked through the familiar streets with Marcus and his search party, accepting the concerned looks and whispered gossip with a practiced smile. But beneath her calm exterior, her mind raced with images of amber eyes and silver fur, of impossible transformations and a man who called himself Kale. "You should be more careful," Marcus said as they reached her cottage. His hand lingered on her arm, possessive in a way that made her skin crawl. A woman alone in these woods. Anything could happen. Something did happen, Alara thought, but she only nodded. "Thank you for your concern." She slipped inside before he could say more, bolting the door behind her and leaning against it with a shaky breath. The small cottage felt suffocating suddenly, its walls too close, its ceiling too low. She'd lived here her entire life, but now it felt like a cage. Alara moved through her morning routine mechanically, starting a fire in the hearth, heating water for tea, checking her dwindling supplies of dried herbs. But her thoughts kept drifting north, toward the abandoned hunting cabin and the wounded shifter who might or might not be there. She shouldn't go. She should forget last night ever happened, return to her simple life of healing and isolation. It would be safer, smarter. But safe and smart had never made her feel the way she'd felt last night. Needed, trusted, connected to something larger than herself. By midday, Alara had made her decision. She packed a basket with supplies, clean bandages, stronger healing salves, bread and cheese wrapped in cloth, a spare shirt that had belonged to her father. Then she slipped out the back door, taking the long route through the village gardens to avoid prying eyes. The forest welcomed her like an old friend. She followed the stream north, her feet finding the path with surprising ease, as if something was guiding her steps. The lightning-struck oak stood like a sentinel where the stream bent east, its blackened trunk split down the middle by some long-ago storm. Alara turned east, pushing through dense underbrush until she saw it. The hunting cabin, nearly swallowed by creeping vines and years of neglect. Smoke curled from the crumbling chimney. He was here. Her heart hammered as she approached the door. What if he'd changed his mind about not hurting her? What if whatever debt he claimed to owe had expired with the sunrise? She knocked anyway. The door opened immediately, and Kale stood before her, dressed now in worn leather pants that looked like they'd been stashed here long ago. His chest was still bare, displaying those angry red scars that had already faded to pink at the edges. His silver hair was damp, as if he'd bathed in the stream. "You came," he said, and she couldn't read the emotion in his voice. "I brought supplies." Alara held up the basket, suddenly feeling foolish. "I thought you might need—" Kyle pulled her inside, closing the door quickly and scanning the tree line before releasing her. "You shouldn't be here. If you were followed, I wasn't." Alara set the basket on the rickety table that dominated the cabin's single room. "I know how to move through the forest unseen. My mother taught me." Something flickered across Kale's face. "Your mother? Tell me about her. Why?" Alara busied herself unpacking the basket, avoiding his intense gaze. "Because the way you healed me last night wasn't entirely normal." Kale moved closer, and she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "The herbs you used, yes, but there was something else. Something in your touch that accelerated my healing beyond even shifter capabilities." Alara's hand stilled on the bandages. "I don't know what you mean." "Liar." The word was soft, almost gentle. "You felt it. That connection between us. It's not just from my side, Alara. You have power in you, whether you acknowledge it or not." She finally looked up at him, and the intensity in those amber eyes made her breath catch. "My mother knew things, healing arts that went beyond herbs and poultices. The villagers whispered that she was a witch, but she always said she was simply aware, connected to the natural world in ways others weren't." "And your father?" "Strong, impossibly strong." Alara's voice dropped to a whisper. He could lift a fallen tree by himself. Once, when a horse spooked and nearly trampled me, he moved so fast he was just a blur. They both died when I was 10. The fire, her throat tightened. Everyone said it was an accident, but I always wondered. Cale's hand found hers, his fingers warm and rough. If they were running from something. Alara nodded, not trusting her voice. There are humans with supernatural bloodlines, Cale said quietly. Dormant gifts passed down from ancient unions between shifters and humans, or witches who walked between worlds. Most never manifest, but sometimes, under the right circumstances. He squeezed her hand gently. Sometimes they wake up. You think that's what happened? When I touched you? I think you recognized something in me because you carry something similar in yourself. Kyle released her hand and stepped back, though she could see the reluctance in the movement. Which makes what I'm about to tell you even more complicated. Alara's stomach clenched. What? The ones who attacked me. They're not just rivals for pack leadership. They're hunting for something. Someone. His jaw tightened. There's a prophecy among shifter kind, passed down through generations. It speaks of a human with the old blood, one who can bridge the divide between our worlds. The one who bonds with her will unite the fractured packs, or destroy them all. The cabin suddenly felt very small. And you think I don't know what you are yet. Cale's eyes blazed with golden fire. But Darius, the shifter who attacked me, he's been hunting for years, killing anyone who might fit the prophecy's description. Women with gifts, daughters of mixed bloodlines, healers with unexplained abilities. He moved toward her again, and this time there was something desperate in his movement. If he discovers you exist, if he feels what I felt when you touched me, he won't stop until you're either his mate or dead. Alara's mind reeled. Prophecies, ancient bloodlines. A supernatural war she'd never known existed, suddenly threatening to swallow her whole. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Why not just leave? Go back to your pack? Forget you ever met me? Cale reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. His touch sent that now familiar tingling racing through her entire body, and she saw his pupils dilate in response. Because from the moment you knelt beside me in the snow, covered in my blood and offering mercy when you should have run. His voice roughened, becoming almost a growl. I haven't been able to think of anything but keeping you safe, and that terrifies me more than any prophecy or rival pack ever could. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and Alara found herself leaning into the touch despite every logical thought screaming at her to run. I don't even know what you are, she breathed. Alpha? Beta? You mentioned pack hierarchy. Cale's smile was bitter. I'm the Alpha, Alara, king of the Silver Crest pack, strongest shifter in 5 territories. I've ruled for 15 years, fought off countless challenges, built peace treaties with neighboring packs. His hands dropped from her face, and one human woman with wild hair and fearless eyes has undone me in a single night. Chapter 4. The Alpha's Burden. The silence that followed Cale's confession stretched between them like a living thing. Alara stared at the man, the Alpha, before her, trying to reconcile the wounded wolf she'd cradled in the snow with the king of a supernatural empire she'd never known existed. He looked almost vulnerable now, standing in the dusty cabin with his scars on display and his secrets laid bare. Why were you alone? She asked finally. If you're an Alpha, where was your pack when Darius attacked? Pain flashed across Kyle's face. That's the betrayal I mentioned. Someone in my inner circle told Darius where I'd be, when I'd be most vulnerable. He moved to the cabin's single window, staring out into the forest. I've been hunting a rogue pack at our northern border, ferals who've lost their humanity and prey on humans. I went to track them alone because I thought I could trust my beta to protect our territory in my absence. You thought wrong. Yes. The single word carried the weight of a kingdom. Marcus Vane, my beta, my second in command, the shifter I've fought beside for a decade, sold me out to Darius. Told him exactly where I'd be and when. If I hadn't caught Darius's scent on the wind seconds before the ambush, I'd be dead. Alara's breath caught. Marcus? But there's a Marcus in my village. The mayor's son. Cale turned sharply. Describe him. tall dark hair, blue eyes. Handsome, I suppose, though there's something cold about him. She shuddered, remembering the possessive way he'd touched her arm that morning. He's been pursuing me for months, but I've always refused him. There's something off about him. Something that makes my skin crawl. God's below. Cale crossed the cabin in 3 strides, gripping her shoulders. Stay away from him, Alara. Whatever you do, don't let him touch you. Don't let him get you alone. If he's who I think he is, he's your beta. Living in Millhaven? Alara's mind raced. Connecting pieces she'd never known formed a puzzle. How long has he been there? 6 months. I sent him to investigate rumors of rogue activity near human settlements. Cale's hands tightened on her shoulders. He said he'd found nothing. But if he's been living in your village, courting you... His eyes blazed gold. He knows what you are, Alara, or at least suspects it. That's why he wants you. Terror and fury warred in Alara's chest. The prophecy. Yes, if Marcus has allied with Darius, they're planning to use you as a weapon. Force a bond, unite the packs under Darius's rule, and destroy anyone who opposes them. Kyle released her suddenly, pacing like a caged animal. I've endangered you by coming here, by letting you help me. I should have died in that snow and saved you from all of this. Don't. Alara's voice came out sharper than intended. Don't you dare decide what's best for me without asking. I've had a lifetime of people telling me what I should do, where I belong, what I'm worth. I won't accept it from you, too. Cale stopped pacing, staring at her with something like wonder. You're not afraid. I'm terrified, Alara corrected. But I'm also angry, and I'm tired of running from things I don't understand. She moved toward him, closing the distance he'd created. You said you felt something when I touched you. A connection. Do you think that's the bond? The one from the prophecy? I don't know. Cale's voice dropped to barely a whisper. True mate bonds are rare, even among shifters. They're supposed to be instantaneous, undeniable, like finding the other half of your soul. He reached out hesitantly, his fingers hovering inches from her face. But what I feel when I'm near you, it's more than attraction. It's recognition, like I've been searching for you my entire life without knowing what I was looking for. Alara's heart thundered in her chest. She closed the remaining distance between them, letting his palm finally cup her cheek. The tingling sensation exploded into something more, a warmth that spread from the point of contact through her entire body, settling in her chest like a second heartbeat. Cale's breath hitched. You feel that? Yes. Alara's hand rose to cover his, holding it against her face. What does it mean? It means we're in more danger than I thought. But Kyle didn't pull away. Instead, his other hand found her waist, drawing her closer. If this is a true mate bond forming, Darius and Marcus will sense it once it's complete. They'll come for you with everything they have. Then teach me. Alara looked up into those burning amber eyes. Teach me what I am, what I can do. If I have power, I want to know how to use it. I won't be a helpless pawn in someone else's war. Admiration flickered across Cale's face. You're extraordinary, do you know that? I'm a village outcast with a dead family and no future, Alara said bitterly. There's nothing extraordinary about me. You saved the life of an Alpha King without knowing what he was. You walked into these woods alone to bring supplies to a monster who could have killed you. Kyle's thumb traced her lower lip, and Alara felt heat pool in her stomach. You stand here now, learning that everything you thought you knew about the world is a lie, and instead of running, you ask to be taught how to fight. If that's not extraordinary, I don't know what is. Before Alara could respond, a howl echoed through the forest, long, low, and searingly close. Kyle went rigid, his entire body shifting into predatory alertness. No, they can't have tracked me here already. Who? But Alara already knew the answer. Another howl joined the first, then a third. They were coming from different directions, surrounding the cabin, Marcus and Darius's pack. Cale released her, moving to grab his boots from beside the fireplace. They must have scouts watching the village. If they saw you leave, followed you here. He bit off a curse. I've been so focused on healing that I didn't maintain a proper perimeter. Stupid. What do we do? Alara's hand found the small knife she kept in her skirt pocket, laughably inadequate against supernatural predators. But better than nothing, Cale looked at her. and in his eyes, she saw a war being waged. The Alpha's instinct to protect warring with the warrior's knowledge that they were outnumbered and trapped. "I need you to listen very carefully," he said, his voice taking on the ring of absolute command. "There's a root cellar beneath the back floorboards. You're going to hide there while I deal with them." "Absolutely not." Alara planted her feet. "I won't hide while you fight alone. You don't understand. If they get their hands on you, then we make sure they don't." Alara grabbed the silver knife from her basket, the one she used for harvesting herbs under moonlight. "My mother once told me that silver burns shifters. Is that true?" Kale's eyes widened. "Yes, but Alara, then we have a weapon." She pressed the knife into his hand. "You're healing but not fully healed. You need every advantage. Take it." The howls were closer now, and through the window Alara could see shadows moving between the trees. Large shadows, too large to be natural wolves. Cale gripped the silver knife, then pulled her against him in a fierce embrace. His lips brushed her forehead, and she felt his words as much as heard them. "If I fall, you run. Don't look back. Don't try to help me. Run to the village and find the old woman who lives in the cottage with blue shutters at the eastern edge. Her name is Mara. Tell her the Silver King sent you. She'll know what to do." "Kale, promise me." Alara looked up at him, at this impossible man who'd crashed into her life and turned everything upside down, and knew she was about to make a promise she had no intention of keeping. "I promise," she whispered. The door exploded inward in a shower of splintered wood. Chapter 5. Blood and Awakening. The wolf that crashed through the doorway was massive, its fur the color of midnight with eyes like cold fire. But it wasn't the largest. Behind it, 2 more shifters prowled into view, circling the cabin with predatory grace. And then Marcus stepped through the ruined doorway in human form, his handsome face twisted into a cruel smile. Well, well, the mighty Alpha King, hiding in a hunter's shack with a human pet. Marcus's voice dripped with mockery. "How far you've fallen, Cale." Cale moved in front of Alara, his body a living shield. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers flexed around the silver knife. "This is between us, Marcus. Let the woman go." "But she's the whole point." Marcus's gaze slid past Cale to lock onto Alara, and she felt the weight of something predatory and hungry in that stare. "Did he tell you, little healer? Did the Alpha explain why I've been courting you so patiently these past months?" "She knows," Cale growled, and Alara heard something inhuman creeping into his voice. "She knows you're a traitor and a coward who can't face me without an army at your back." Marcus laughed. "I'm a survivor. Why should I fight you fairly when I can simply take what I want?" He gestured, and the 3 wolves spread out, blocking every exit. "Darius sends his regards, by the way. He's very eager to meet your little mate once we've dealt with you." The word mate sent a jolt through Alara's body. Was that what they were? Was this terrifying, exhilarating connection between them really a bond? She didn't have time to process the thought before Marcus lunged. Cale met him halfway, and Alara gasped as both men exploded into their wolf forms mid-leap. Silver and black collided in a fury of teeth and claws, crashing into the cabin's far wall hard enough to crack the timber. The other 3 wolves charged. Alara didn't think. She grabbed the heavy iron poker from beside the fireplace and swung it at the nearest wolf with all her strength. The metal connected with the creature's skull with a sickening crack, and the wolf yelped, stumbling sideways, but the other 2 were already on her. Alara screamed as jaws closed around her arm, pain exploding white-hot through her body. She felt teeth scraping bone, felt her blood running hot down her skin. Terror gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. She drove the poker into the wolf's eye, and it released her with a howl of agony. The 3rd wolf hit her from behind, slamming her to the floor. The poker flew from her grip, skittering across the wooden boards. Alara's vision blurred with pain as claws raked across her back, shredding through her dress and into flesh. "This is how I die," she thought with strange clarity. "Torn apart by monsters in a forgotten cabin, and no one will ever know what happened to me." But then something inside her shifted. It wasn't a physical transformation like Cale's. Nothing so obvious. Instead, it felt like a door opening in her mind, in her very soul, releasing something that had been locked away for 23 years. Power flooded through her veins like liquid sunlight, burning away the pain, burning away the fear. Alara's hands pressed flat against the floor, and she felt the earth respond. The wooden boards beneath her palms began to glow with a soft green light. Vines erupted from between the cracks, growing at impossible speed, wrapping around the wolf on her back. The creature yelped in surprise as the plants lifted it bodily into the air and slammed it against the wall, holding it there with crushing force. The injured wolf lunged at her again, but Alara raised her hand instinctively, and thorns, huge, wicked thorns, burst from the floorboards, creating a barrier of living wood between her and her attacker. The cabin filled with the scent of growing things, of rich earth and green life, completely at odds with the violence happening around her. Marcus, still locked in combat with Cale, broke away long enough to stare at Alara in shock. Impossible. She's awakened already. The bond isn't even complete. His distraction cost him. Cale's jaws closed around his throat, the silver knife Alara had given him clutched between his teeth. Marcus screamed, a sound that was half human, half animal, and shifted back to human form, collapsing to the floor with smoke rising from the silver burn. The remaining conscious wolf, seeing its leader defeated, turned and fled through the broken door. Silence fell over the cabin, broken only by heavy breathing and Marcus's pained whimpers. Kyle shifted back to human form, naked and covered in fresh wounds that were already beginning to heal. He looked at Alara, at the glowing vines still wrapped around the unconscious wolf, at the thorns creating a protective circle around her kneeling form, and something like awe filled his face. "Alara," he breathed. "What did you do?" She stared at her hands, at the faint green glow still pulsing beneath her skin. I didn't know I could." Her words trailed off, as the reality of what had just happened crashed over her. She'd used magic. Real, undeniable magic. Her mother's blood. Her father's strength. They hadn't been human at all. "You're a Thornborn," Cale said quietly, moving toward her carefully as if she might bolt. "An ancient bloodline we thought extinct. Nature witches who could command the wild growth, who walked between the human and shifter worlds as bridges and healers." He knelt beside her, heedless of his nakedness or his injuries. "Your mother wasn't just aware of the natural world, Alara. She was part of it. And so are you." Alara looked down at her injured arm. The wounds were already closing, green light sealing torn flesh with impossible speed. She should have been horrified, terrified. Instead, she felt a strange sense of rightness, as if a piece of herself that had always been missing had suddenly clicked into place. "The prophecy," she whispered. "A human with old blood who can bridge the divide. That's what I am." "Yes." Kyle's hand found hers, and where they touched, green light and amber fire swirled together, creating something entirely new, and the one who bonds with you will unite the packs or destroy them. That's why Darius wants you. Why Marcus betrayed me. Marcus groaned from where he lay bleeding on the floor. "You're both fools," he rasped. "Darius won't stop. He has half the packs in the north already. When he comes for her..." He coughed, blood speckling his lips. "You'll fall, Alpha, and your precious mate will watch you die before she becomes his queen." Kyle's hand tightened on Alara's. "Get up, Marcus. You're going to take a message back to Darius." "I'm not your messenger boy," Marcus snarled. "No, you're my warning." Kyle's voice dropped to something dark and dangerous. "Tell Darius that if he wants Alara Thorn, he'll have to go through every last member of the Silvercrest pack. Tell him the Alpha King has found his true mate, and that any who threaten her will face the full fury of a bonded pair." His eyes blazed gold. "Tell him the war he wanted has begun." Marcus stared at them both, fear finally creeping into his arrogant expression. He stumbled to his feet, one hand pressed to his burned throat, and back toward the door. "You're signing both your death warrants." "Maybe," Alara said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "But we'll die fighting. Can Darius say the same?" Marcus fled, shifting mid-stride and disappearing into the forest. The trapped wolf, released from Alara's vines, limped after him. And then she and Cale were alone in the destroyed cabin, surrounded by broken furniture and the lingering scent of battle. their hands still clasped together with power humming between them. "So," Alara said after a long moment, "I'm a nature witch destined to unite or destroy the shifter world, and you're an alpha king with a target on your back. This is really happening." Despite everything, Kale laughed, a real, genuine sound of amusement. "Welcome to my world, mate." The word sent a shiver down Alara's spine. Mate. Not just a connection, but a destiny. She should run. She should go back to her simple life and pretend none of this had ever happened. But looking at Kale, at this impossible man who'd protected her without hesitation, who'd seen her magic awaken and looked at her with wonder instead of fear, she knew she was already too far gone to turn back. "What do we do now?" she asked. Kale's smile turned fierce. "Now we go to war." Chapter 6. Into the wild, the cabin was no longer safe. Kyle had explained it tersely as he dressed in the spare clothes Alara had brought, his wounds healing before her eyes with supernatural speed. "Marcus will report back to Darius within the hour. They'll send a larger force, maybe Darius himself. We need to be gone before then." Now, as twilight painted the forest in shades of purple and gold, Alara found herself following Kale deeper into the thornwood than she'd ever ventured. Her arm still ached where the wolf had bitten her, though the green light had sealed the wounds to nothing more than pink scars. Every time she looked at them, she felt that door in her mind creak open a little wider, revealing glimpses of power she didn't understand. "Where are we going?" she asked, pushing through a tangle of thorny bushes that seemed to part for her now, responding to some unspoken command. "To my pack's true territory." Kale glanced back at her, and even in the fading light, his amber eyes glowed. "The Silvercrest stronghold. It's hidden deep in the mountains, protected by wards and natural barriers. No one can find it unless a pack member guides them. And they'll accept me? A human." Alara's voice betrayed her uncertainty. "Even if I'm whatever I am now?" Kale stopped, turning to face her fully. Around them, the forest had grown wild and primal. Trees so massive their roots formed natural archways, moss glowing faintly with bioluminescence. They'd crossed some invisible threshold into a place where the supernatural reigned. "They'll accept you because you're mine," Kale said, his voice dropping into that commanding tone that made her breath catch. "Because the moment you awakened your power to save both our lives, the bond between us began to solidify." "Can't you feel it?" Alara could. It was like a golden thread connecting her heart to his, growing stronger with every passing moment. When she concentrated, she could almost sense his emotions, his determination, his protective fury, and underneath it all, a growing warmth directed solely at her. "I feel it," she admitted. "But I don't understand it. Yesterday I was just a village healer. Today I'm apparently a prophesied witch destined to reshape the shifter world. It's too much, too fast." Kale closed the distance between them, his hands cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "I know, believe me, I know. I've been alpha for 15 years, and in all that time I never thought I'd find a true mate. Most shifters never do. We marry for alliance, for strength, but true bonds?" He shook his head. "They're stories we tell cubs to give them hope." "Then why us?" Alara's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady thunder of his heartbeat. "Why now, when it puts us both in so much danger?" Fate has a twisted sense of humor. Kale's thumb traced her cheekbone, and she shivered at the tenderness in the gesture. "But I'm not fool enough to question it. Not when I've spent my entire life feeling like something was missing, and now I've found it in a stubborn healer who fights wolves with an iron poker." Despite everything, Alara laughed. "I didn't have many options. You had the option to hide, to run, to save yourself." Kale's expression grew serious. "But you stood and fought beside me. Do you know what that means to a shifter? To an alpha?" Alara shook her head. "It means you're worthy. It means you're strong enough to stand at my side, not behind me." His forehead pressed against hers, and she felt that golden thread between them pulse with heat. "The pack will see that. And if they don't accept you immediately, they will learn to." A howl echoed through the forest, distant but growing closer. Kale stiffened, his head snapping toward the sound. "They're tracking us faster than I expected. We need to move." They ran. Alara had never been athletic. Years of bending over herb gardens and mixing tinctures hadn't prepared her for sprinting through wild forest. But something had changed in her awakening. Her legs carried her with newfound strength, her lungs expanding with air that tasted of green magic. The forest itself seemed to help her, branches bending away from her path, roots smoothing beneath her feet. "How much farther?" she gasped. 2 miles to the ward line." Kyle moved beside her with inhuman grace, barely winded. "Once we cross it, we'll be safe. Darius's wolves can't enter Silvercrest territory without triggering alarms throughout the stronghold." Another howl, much closer. Alara risked a glance over her shoulder and saw shapes moving through the darkening trees. At least a dozen wolves, massive and swift, gaining on them with terrifying speed. "Kyle, I know. Keep running." But Alara's human endurance, even enhanced by her awakening power, was reaching its limit. Her legs burned. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The wolves were close enough now that she could hear their panting, the thud of their paws against earth. "I can't," she started. Cale swept her up into his arms without breaking stride, his supernatural strength making her weight negligible. "Hold on to me." Alara wrapped her arms around his neck as Cale accelerated, moving faster than any human should be able to. Trees blurred past them, the forest becoming a smear of green and brown. She buried her face against his shoulder, feeling the play of muscles beneath his shirt, the heat of his body surrounding her. "There," Cale breathed, and Alara looked up to see a shimmer in the air ahead, like heat waves rising from summer pavement, but vertical, forming an invisible wall between the trees. They crashed through it, and Alara felt the magic wash over her like a wave of cool water. Behind them, the pursuing wolves slammed into the barrier and rebounded, yelping in pain. They paced on the other side, snarling and snapping, but unable to cross. Cale set her down gently, both of them breathing hard. "We made it." Alara stared at the ward, fascinated by the way it glimmered when the wolves tested it. "What happens if they try to force their way through?" "It'll burn them, badly." Cale's arm remained around her waist, and she leaned into his solid warmth gratefully. "The wards are keyed to Silvercrest blood. Anyone else who tries to cross without permission—" He made a cutting gesture. One of the wolves on the other side shifted, a tall, scarred man with cruel eyes. Not Darius, but someone high-ranking in his pack. "Tell your mate she only delays the inevitable, Alpha King," the man called. "Darius will have her, one way or another." "Tell Darius he's welcome to try," Cale shot back. "But he'll have to get through me first, and if the prophecy is true, he'll have to face what we become together." The scarred man's smile was ugly. "The prophecy speaks of unity or destruction. What makes you think you're on the right side of that equation?" His gaze slid to Alara. "Maybe the little witch will be the one to destroy you all." With that, he shifted back and led the pack away into the darkness. Alara shivered, and not from cold. What if he's right? What if I'm meant to destroy the shifter world, not unite it? Cale turned her to face him, his hands firm on her shoulders. "Then we'll face that together too." "But I don't believe it, Alara. I saw you in that cabin. You fought to protect, not destroy. You awakened your power to save lives, not take them." His voice softened. "That's who you are. That's who you choose to be. How can you have so much faith in me when we barely know each other? Because the bond doesn't lie." Cale's hand moved to rest over her heart, and she felt answering warmth bloom beneath his palm. "I feel your heart, Alara Thorne. It's fierce and kind and brave. Those aren't the qualities of someone destined for destruction." Alara wanted to believe him. Gods, she wanted to believe that the terrifying power flowing through her veins was meant for good. But doubt gnawed at her. Doubt fed by years of being called worthless, of being cast aside and mocked. As if sensing her thoughts, Cale pulled her into an embrace, his chin resting on top of her head. "The pack is a mile ahead. When we arrive, stay close to me. There will be questions, challenges maybe. Some won't understand why I've brought a human into our stronghold, but you don't have to face them alone." "I've always been alone," Alara whispered into his chest. "Not anymore." Cale's arms tightened around her. From now on, we face everything together. That's what mates do. The word still sent electricity through her. Mate. It implied forever, implied a depth of connection she'd never imagined possible, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Together, she echoed, testing the word. Cale pulled back just enough to look down at her, and the intensity in his amber eyes stole her breath. Together, he confirmed. Then, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his head. Their lips met, and the world exploded into sensation. Chapter 7. The Stronghold. The kiss was like nothing Alara had ever experienced. It wasn't just physical, though the press of Cale's lips against hers sent heat racing through her body. It was deeper than that. The golden thread connecting them blazed brilliant, and suddenly she could feel everything: his fierce protectiveness, his desire, his wonder at finding her, and underneath it all, a bone-deep loneliness that mirrored her own, finally beginning to ease. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alara's fingers were tangled in Kyle's silver hair, and his hands were buried in her dark curls. The green glow beneath her skin pulsed in rhythm with the amber fire in his eyes. That was... Cale's voice was rough. Terrifying, Alara finished. I was going to say perfect. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his stern features into something almost boyish. But terrifying works too. A distant howl, different from the pursuit earlier, musical and welcoming, echoed through the trees. Cale's expression shifted back to the alpha, though his hand remained gentle as it found hers. That's the patrol greeting. They know we're here. He squeezed her fingers. Ready to meet your new family? The word lodged somewhere in Alara's chest, too big and fragile to examine closely. They walked hand in hand through the ancient forest, and with each step, Alara felt the wild magic growing stronger. The trees here were massive beyond belief, their trunks wider than her cottage. Glowing mushrooms clustered at their bases, and she could swear she heard whispers in the rustling leaves. Not words exactly, but something close. Recognition. Then they rounded a curve in the path, and Alara's breath caught. The Silvercrest stronghold rose before them like something from a dream. It wasn't a single building, but a collection of structures built into and around the massive trees. Wooden walkways connected platforms at various heights, rope bridges swaying gently in the breeze. Lights glowed in windows carved into tree trunks themselves, and she could see figures moving about, some human-shaped, some distinctly not. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's home. Kyle's voice carried a note of pride. We've been here for 6 generations, growing with the forest rather than cutting it down. The thornwood provides for us, and we protect it in return. As they approached the main entrance, a massive archway formed by 2 intertwined oak trees, figures emerged from the shadows. Wolves, dozens of them, ranging from silver white to midnight black. They arranged themselves in 2 lines, creating a path, and Alara realized with a start that they were forming an honor guard for Cale, for their alpha. Stay close, Cale murmured, and then his entire bearing changed. His shoulders squared, his chin lifted, and suddenly he radiated authority like a physical force. This was the Alpha King, the leader who commanded respect from an entire supernatural nation. They walked between the lines of wolves, and Alara felt the weight of dozens of eyes upon her. Some curious, some suspicious, a few openly hostile. Her hand tightened on Cale's, and she felt reassurance flow through their bond. At the end of the honor guard stood a woman in human form, tall and regal, with hair the color of autumn leaves and eyes like molten gold. She wore leather and furs, and a silver circlet rested on her brow. When she saw Cale, relief flooded her features. Alpha. She dropped to one knee, and every wolf behind her did the same. We feared the worst when you didn't return. Marcus said, Marcus is a traitor. Cale's voice rang with command. He led me into an ambush with Darius's pack. He's been stripped of his rank and exiled. Shocked murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves. The woman's eyes blazed. I knew something was wrong. He returned 3 hours ago, claimed you'd sent him ahead with urgent news, then fled before I could question him properly. She rose, her gaze finally landing on Alara. And who is this? Alara felt the full weight of that golden stare and fought not to flinch. This woman was powerful, not just physically, but in the way she held herself. A leader. This is Alara Thorne, Kyle said, and his hand moved to the small of Alara's back, a gesture of support and possession. My true mate. The silence that followed was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Wolves shifted to human form, voices rising in disbelief and question. The woman's eyes widened, darting between Kyle and Alara as if searching for proof of the impossible claim. Silence. Kale's voice cracked like a whip, and every shifter immediately quieted. I understand your shock, but the bond is real, already forming. Alara is Thornborn, a nature witch with the old blood. She awakened her power defending us from Darius's wolves. She is under my protection, and any who challenge that challenge me directly. The woman studied Alara with new intensity, and Alara forced herself to meet that piercing gaze. After a long moment, the woman's expression softened into something like wonder. Thornborn, she breathed. I thought the bloodline extinct. My grandmother told stories of them. Witches who could command the wild growth, who bridged our world and humanities. She stepped forward and, to Alara's surprise, placed a fist over her heart in what looked like a salute. I am Sarah, Alpha's sister and commander of the Silvercrest Guard. If my brother has claimed you as mate, then you are family, and family is protected above all else. The tension in Alara's shoulders eased slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Sarah's smile turned wry. You're about to face a stronghold full of curious, gossiping shifters who haven't seen their alpha bring home a mate in, well, ever. She glanced at Kale. The council will want to meet her immediately, and grandmother has been pacing her chambers since Marcus's cryptic message. She knew something was wrong. Kale grimaced. Of course she did. Fine. Assemble the council in the Great Hall. But first, I need to get Alara settled. She's been attacked, run for miles, and crossed the ward boundary all in one night. I'm fine, Alara protested, though exhaustion was indeed creeping into her bones now that the immediate danger had passed. You're swaying on your feet, Kale countered. He turned to Sarah. Give us 1 hour, then we'll face the council. Sarah nodded and began issuing orders to the assembled shifters, who dispersed with military efficiency. Soon, only the 3 of them remained in the clearing. She's formidable, Alara said quietly, watching Sarah command the guards. She's the best warrior I have, Kale agreed with obvious affection, and one of the few people I trust completely. She'll help protect you when I can't. Because you think Darius will attack here. It wasn't a question. Kale's expression darkened. He will. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow. But he'll come. The prophecy makes you too valuable to abandon. His hand found hers again. But he'll have to go through an entire pack of the fiercest fighters in 5 territories. And he'll have to face what we're becoming together. That phrase again. What we're becoming. Alara could feel it. The bond growing stronger with each shared touch. Each moment of trust. It was exhilarating and terrifying. This loss of solitude she'd worn like armor for so long. Come, Kyle said gently, tugging her toward a particularly massive tree with stairs carved into its trunk. Let me show you home. Home. Another word that hit too hard, too deep. As they climbed the stairs, Alara looked back at the stronghold spreading below them, wolves moving about their business, lights glowing warmly in the gathering dark, the sound of laughter and conversation drifting up from below. A community. A family. Everything she'd been denied in Millhaven. Everything she'd convinced herself she didn't need. And at the center of it all was Kale. This impossible alpha who looked at her like she was something precious rather than worthless. What are you thinking? Kale asked as they reached a platform near the tree's crown. Alara turned to him, this man who'd changed her entire world in less than 24 hours. I'm thinking that I should be terrified, that I should run back to my cottage and pretend none of this is real. But I don't want to. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. For the first time in my life, I don't want to run away. Kyle's smile was like sunrise. Good, because I'm not letting you go. Chapter 8. The council's test Kale's chambers were nothing like Alara had expected. She'd imagined something austere, militaristic, fitting for an alpha king. Instead, she found herself in a space that breathed warmth. Furs and woven blankets covered a massive bed built into an alcove of the tree itself. Books lined shelves carved directly into the living wood, their spines worn with use. A fireplace, impossibly built into the tree without burning it, crackled with welcoming flames. "The tree is alive," Alara breathed, running her fingers over the smooth wood wall. She could feel it, a slow, ancient heartbeat pulsing beneath the bark. How is this possible? Magic. The same kind you carry in your blood. Kyle moved to a cabinet and pulled out clean clothes. "The thornwood and the shifters have been connected for millennia. We protect the forest and it shelters us in return. Your ancestors helped forge that bond." Alara's hand stilled on the wall. "My ancestors." The Thornborn weren't just healers and witches. They were diplomats, bridges between the human and shifter worlds. Kale set the clothes, a soft tunic and leather pants, on the bed. They helped negotiate the first treaties, establish the territories. Without them, we would have destroyed each other centuries ago. Then what happened to them? Kale's expression grew somber. War. About 60 years ago, a human king decided shifters were abominations that needed to be eliminated. He hunted down anyone with connections to our world, including the Thornborn. Most died. The few who survived went into hiding, suppressing their gifts to protect their children. He moved closer to her. "Your mother was likely one of those children. She knew what she was but never told you, hoping to keep you safe." Tears burned Alara's eyes. All those years of feeling different, of wondering why she didn't quite fit in the human world, and her mother had known. Had carried that secret to protect her. "Hey." Kale's thumb brushed away a tear that escaped down her cheek. She did what she thought was right. And maybe she was. You survived, grew strong, learned to use your gifts even without knowing their true nature. But now everyone knows. Alara's voice cracked. "Darius knows, Marcus knows." "I can't hide anymore." "No," Kale agreed. "But you don't have to hide here. Here, you can be exactly what you are." His hand cupped her face, and she leaned into the warmth. "I need to leave you alone for a few minutes to speak with Sarah. Make sure the perimeter is secured." "Can you manage?" "There's water for washing and those clothes should fit." Alara nodded, not trusting her voice. After Kyle left, she stood in the middle of his chambers. Their chambers now, she supposed, and tried to process the whirlwind her life had become. Yesterday she'd been nobody. Today she was a prophesied witch, the mate of an alpha king, and apparently the key to either uniting or destroying the shifter world. No pressure. She washed quickly, wincing as the water stung her healing wounds, and changed into the clothes Kale had left. They fit surprisingly well, soft against her skin and far more practical than her torn dress. When she looked at herself in the polished metal mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back, wild-haired and fierce-eyed, with faint green light still pulsing beneath her skin. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, expecting Kale. Instead, an elderly woman entered, tiny and bent with age, but with eyes that blazed with the same amber fire as Kale's. She leaned heavily on a gnarled walking stick, and power radiated from her like heat from a forge. "So," the old woman said, her voice surprisingly strong, "you're the one my grandson has bound himself to." Alara straightened, instinctively recognizing authority. "You must be his grandmother. Sarah mentioned you." "I am Thora, elder of the Silvercrest Pack and keeper of our histories." The old woman moved closer, those burning eyes examining Alara with uncomfortable intensity. "Show me your hands, girl." Uncertain but unwilling to show fear, Alara extended her hands. Thora gripped them with surprising strength, and the moment their skin touched, Alara gasped. Images flooded her mind. Ancient forests, wolves running beneath moonlight, women with glowing hands tending to wounded shifters, treaties signed in blood and magic. The Thornborn. Her ancestors. Thora released her abruptly, and the visions faded. The old woman's expression had shifted to something like satisfaction, Pure bloodline, stronger than I expected, especially for one who's spent her life dormant. She moved to the chair by the fire and lowered herself into it with a grunt. Sit, child. We don't have much time before the council descends, and there are things you need to know. Alara sat on the edge of the bed, her heart racing. What things? The prophecy, for one. I assume my fool grandson told you only the basics. Unite or destroy, fate and destiny, the usual dramatic nonsense. Thora's eyes glittered with amusement. But the full prophecy is more complex, and more dangerous. Tell me. Thora studied her for a long moment, then nodded as if Alara had passed some invisible test. The complete prophecy speaks of a Thornborn who will bond with an Alpha in a time of great division. Their union will force a choice upon all shifter kind, embrace change and evolution, or cling to the old ways and face extinction. Those who resist will fall. Those who accept will rise. That sounds like unity, not destruction, Alara said slowly. To those who fear change, unity looks like destruction. Thora's expression grew grave. Darius and his followers believe in the old ways, pure bloodlines, no human contact, shifters above all other creatures. The thought of an alpha bonding with a human-born witch, of merging two types of magic. She shook her head. To them, it's an abomination that will dilute what makes us strong. And to you? A smile crossed Thora's weathered face. I'm old enough to remember when Thornborn walked freely among us. I've seen what true cooperation between our kinds can accomplish. If you and Kale can forge a full bond, can show the Pax that there's strength in unity rather than isolation. She leaned forward. You could reshape our entire world, child, but only if you survive long enough. Comforting, Alara muttered. Thora laughed, a sound like crackling leaves. I like you. You have spine. You'll need it. Her expression sobered. The council will test you tonight. Some will welcome you. Others will see you as a threat to everything they know, and a few may already be swayed by Darius's rhetoric. Alara's stomach dropped. Traitors in the pack? Possibly. Marcus wasn't acting alone. His betrayal went too smoothly, too easily. Thora's grip tightened on her walking stick. Trust no one except Kale, Sarah, and me. Not until we know who else might be feeding information to Darius. Before Alara could respond, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Kale entered, now dressed in formal leather armor decorated with silver, looking every inch the warrior king. His eyes found Alara immediately, and warmth flooded through their bond. Grandmother, I should have known you'd corner her before the council meeting. Someone needs to prepare the girl. You're too busy being noble and protective. Thora rose with surprising grace. The council is assembled and they're getting impatient. Best not keep them waiting. Kale moved to Alara's side, offering his hand. Are you ready? Alara looked at this man, this alpha who'd crash-landed into her life and offered her a place to belong. She thought of the power humming beneath her skin, the connection binding them together, the dangerous prophecy hanging over their heads. She should be terrified. She was terrified, but she was also tired of being small, of being overlooked, of letting others decide her worth. I'm ready, she said, placing her hand in his. The golden thread between them blazed brilliant, and Kale's eyes widened slightly. The bond is growing stronger. Can you feel it? Yes. And she could. Not just his emotions now, but his thoughts brushing against hers like whispers. His fierce pride in her courage, his determination to protect her, and underneath it all, something deeper, more primal, a claiming that went beyond words. Good. Kale's fingers tightened on hers. Because we're about to face the council together, and I need you to show them exactly what I see when I look at you. What's that? Kale's smile was almost feral. A queen. Chapter 9. Trial by Fire. The great hall was carved into the heart of the largest tree in the stronghold, its interior vast enough to hold hundreds. Tonight, it held what looked like 50 shifters arranged in a semicircle around a central dais, all eyes fixed on the entrance where Alara stood with Kale. The weight of their combined stare was suffocating. Breathe, Kyle murmured, his hand firm at the small of her back. They can smell fear, but they can also smell strength. Show them yours. Alara lifted her chin and walked forward, matching Kale's measured pace. The shifters parted to let them through, and she felt the assessment in every gaze. Some faces showed curiosity, others suspicion. A few, mostly older shifters, looked openly hostile. At the far end of the hall, 5 chairs were arranged in a line. Thora already occupied the center seat, her ancient eyes gleaming with anticipation. The other 4 were filled by shifters who radiated authority, 2 men and 2 women, all watching Alara with varying degrees of interest. "Members of the council," Kale's voice rang through the hall, commanding attention. "I present Alara Thorn, Thornborn Witch and my true mate." The murmurs that followed were immediate and heated. One of the council members, a broad-shouldered man with a scarred face, leaned forward. "You claim a true mate bond with a human?" His voice dripped skepticism. "Alpha, with respect, such bonds are rare even between shifters. How can you be certain this isn't simply attraction?" "Because I feel it, Rowan." Kale's hand moved to rest possessively on Alara's shoulder. The bond formed the moment she awakened her Thornborn gifts, defending us from Darius's ambush. "It grows stronger every hour." "Convenient timing," another council member said. "A willowy woman with hair like moonlight. Marcus returns with tales of your death. Then you appear with a human claiming ancient bloodlines and mate bonds. Some might say it seems calculated." Alara felt anger spark in her chest. Before Kale could respond, she stepped forward. "You think I plan to be attacked by wolves? To discover I'm not fully human? To have my entire world turned upside down in a single night?" Her voice shook with emotion, but she didn't let herself falter. "I was nobody, a village healer the humans mocked and ignored. I had nothing to gain from any of this except a target on my back." The moonlight-haired woman's expression didn't soften. "Show us then. Prove you're Thornborn. Anyone can claim ancient blood." "Lyris," Kale started, but Alara squeezed his hand. "It's all right." She stepped away from him, moving to the center of the dais. Her heart hammered, but beneath the fear, she felt that door in her soul standing open, power waiting to be called. She knelt and pressed her palms flat against the wooden floor. For a moment, nothing happened. Doubt crept in. What if she couldn't do it again? What if the cabin had been a fluke, adrenaline and desperation creating something unrepeatable? Then she felt it. The heartbeat of the tree beneath her hands, the pulse of life running through every root and branch. She closed her eyes and asked rather than commanded, the way her mother had always approached her garden. Not forcing, but inviting. The tree answered. Gasps echoed through the hall as vines burst from the floor, wrapping around the pillars in spirals of green and gold. Flowers bloomed along their length, night-blooming jasmine filling the air with sweet perfume. The wood itself began to glow softly, illuminating the space with gentle light. But Alara didn't stop there. She thought of Kale, of the golden thread connecting them, and willed the vines to take shape. They wove themselves into an arch above the dais, forming intricate patterns, a wolf and a woman, their forms intertwined, crowned with silver flowers. When she finally released the magic, swaying with exhaustion, the hall was silent. Thora spoke first, her voice ringing with satisfaction. "That is Thornborn magic, pure and strong. Only one with true bloodline could command the sacred trees themselves." She looked at the other council members. "Any who doubt should remember our histories. This is what we lost when the Thornborn were hunted to extinction. Or so we thought." Rowan stood, his scarred face thoughtful. "I withdraw my skepticism, Alpha. The magic speaks for itself." He turned to Alara. "But gifts alone don't make a queen. What makes you worthy to stand beside our Alpha?" Alara met his gaze steadily despite her exhaustion. "Nothing. I'm not worthy, not yet. I'm just a healer who's barely begun to understand what she is." She glanced at Kale, drawing strength from the warmth in his eyes. "But I learn fast. I fight when I have to, and I won't abandon those who need me, even when the smart thing would be to run." She looked back at Rowan. "If that's not enough, then tell me what would be." A slow smile crossed the scarred man's face. "Honesty. That's a good start." He inclined his head in what looked like respect, but Lyris wasn't satisfied. "Magic and honesty are all well and good, but you're still human-raised, ignorant of our ways. How can you lead beside our Alpha when you don't understand shifter culture, hierarchy, the delicate politics between packs. She stood, elegant and dangerous. You could cause wars with a single misstep. Then teach me. Ilara's voice came out stronger than she felt. I'm not asking to lead today. I'm asking for a chance to learn, to prove myself over time. Isn't that how any leader earns their place? She's right. Sarah's voice came from the back of the hall. The warrior woman stepped forward, her expression fierce. None of us were born knowing how to lead. We learned, through trial and failure. Why should she be held to a different standard? Because the prophecy makes her dangerous, Lyra shot back. Unite or destroy. Those are the only options. What if we're betting on the wrong outcome? What if we are? Kale's voice cut through the rising arguments, command ringing in every syllable. What if keeping her at arm's length, refusing to let her integrate into the pack, is exactly what pushes the prophecy toward destruction? He moved to stand beside Ilara. Fear creates the very outcomes we dread. I won't make that mistake. Thora rapped her walking stick against the floor, demanding silence. The prophecy will unfold as it must, regardless of our fears. The question before us is simple. Do we accept Ilara Thorne as Alpha's mate and future queen, or do we reject her? Her ancient eyes swept the hall. But know this. Rejection means breaking the mate bond before it fully forms. It would require the Alpha to denounce her publicly and cast her from the pack. Is that what you're asking of Kale? The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Ilara felt Kale's hand find hers, his fingers lacing through hers with unmistakable finality. Through their bond, she felt his determination. He would choose her, even if it meant losing his pack. The knowledge stole her breath. Finally, Rowan spoke. I vote to accept. The Thornborn's return is a gift, not a curse. Another council member, a quiet woman who hadn't yet spoken, nodded. I agree. Accept. The fifth council member, a grizzled elder, grunted his assent. Only Lyris remained, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched until Ilara thought she might scream. I abstain, Lyris said finally. I make no vote for or against. Let time prove her worth. It wasn't the ringing acceptance Ilara had hoped for, but it wasn't rejection either. Thora nodded slowly. Then it's decided. Ilara Thorne is recognized as Alpha's mate, with all rights and protections that entails. She looked directly at Ilara. But know this, child, you will be tested. By this pack, by rival packs, by Darius and those who follow him. The path ahead is dangerous beyond imagining. I understand, Ilara said quietly. Do you? Thora's expression grew grave. Because tomorrow, we send word to the other packs about your existence. And when that happens, the real war begins. As if summoned by her words, a howl pierced the night, close, urgent, and filled with warning. Sarah was already moving toward the door, shifting mid-stride into her wolf form. Other warriors followed, the hall emptying in seconds as the pack responded to the alarm. Kale pulled Ilara close, his body tense. Stay behind me. What's happening? That's the signal for intruders at the northern perimeter. His eyes blazed gold. Darius is already making his move. Chapter 10. The Alpha's choice chaos erupted across the stronghold. Wolves poured from dwellings at every level, shifting mid-leap as they raced toward the northern perimeter. Warriors barked orders, organizing defensive positions with practiced efficiency. Through it all, Kyle remained a pillar of calm authority, his hand never leaving Ilara's. Sarah! He called, and his sister materialized beside them in human form, already armed with silver-edged blades. Report. 20 wolves minimum, possibly more. They're testing the wards at 3 different points. Classic distraction tactic. Sarah's golden eyes narrowed. Darius wants us spread thin so he can punch through our weakest spot. Or he wants us focused on the perimeter so we don't notice what's happening inside. Kale's jaw tightened. Marcus knew our defenses intimately. He could have told Darius about the service tunnels beneath the stronghold. Ilara's blood ran cold. Tunnels? Emergency escape routes, carved through the root systems. Kyle was already moving, pulling her toward a guarded doorway. They're warded too, but if Marcus revealed the ward keys... He didn't finish the thought. They descended spiral stairs carved into the tree's massive trunk, going deeper than Ilara had imagined possible. The air grew thick with earth scent and ancient magic. When they finally reached the bottom, they emerged into a vast underground chamber where massive roots formed natural archways and passages. A dozen warriors stood guard at various tunnel entrances, tense and alert. But one tunnel, the largest, leading north, stood empty. "Where are the sentries for that passage?" Cale's voice was deadly quiet. One of the warriors, a young man barely out of his teens, stepped forward. "They went to investigate a noise, Alpha. Said they heard something." His words cut off as a scream echoed from the tunnel's depths. Then wolves exploded from the darkness. 5 of them, massive and moving with coordinated precision, crashed into the defenders. Alara barely had time to gasp before Cale shoved her behind him and shifted, his transformation so fast she almost missed it. One moment he stood beside her, the next a massive silver wolf launched himself at the attackers. The underground chamber became a whirlwind of violence. Snarls and yelps echoed off stone walls. Blood spattered across ancient roots. Alara pressed herself against the wall, searching desperately for a weapon, for something she could do besides hide like a frightened child. Then she saw him. Darius stepped from the tunnel in human form, flanked by 2 wolves. He was enormous, taller than Cale, broader through the shoulders, with scars crisscrossing his bare chest like a roadmap of battles won. His eyes were black as pitch, no trace of humanity in them. "Alpha King," he said, his voice a rumble like distant thunder. "Still hiding behind your warriors, I see." Cale shifted back to human form, standing naked and unashamed before his enemy. Blood dripped from a gash across his ribs, but he didn't seem to notice. "This is Silvercrest territory, Darius. You've violated every treaty and accord by bringing violence here." "Treaties?" Darius laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "You speak of treaties while bonding with an abomination. You've already broken our most sacred laws, Cale. I'm simply here to correct your mistake." His black eyes found Alara, and the hunger in them made her skin crawl. "Give her to me. Let me complete the bond the prophecy demands. I'll unite the packs under strong leadership, not this weak fusion of human and shifter you're attempting. She's not yours to take." Cale's voice dropped to a growl. "She chose me. The bond has already begun. A bond that can be broken before it fully forms." Darius gestured, and more wolves emerged from the tunnel behind him. 10, 15, 20. Far too many. You're outnumbered, wounded, and weak. Be smart for once in your life. Give her up, abdicate your position, and I'll let you and your pack live. Alara felt Cale's rage through their bond, white-hot and barely controlled. But beneath it, she felt something else, cold calculation. He was assessing options, counting enemies, looking for a way to protect his pack, looking for a way to protect her, even if it cost him everything. "No," she thought fiercely. "I won't let him sacrifice himself for me." The door in her soul wasn't just open anymore. It was wide, yawning, begging to be used. Power thrummed beneath her skin, stronger than it had ever been. Maybe it was the proximity to the ancient roots. Maybe it was the mate bond amplifying her gifts. Maybe it was simply rage at this monster who thought he could take her like property. Alara stepped out from behind Kyle. "Alara." "No." Kyle reached for her, but she was already moving forward, placing herself between the Alpha King and his enemy. "You want me?" she called to Darius, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Then come take me yourself. No hiding behind your wolves. Face me directly." Darius's laugh was genuinely amused. "A human challenging me? How delightful." He waved his wolves back. "Very well, little witch. Let's see what the prophecy saw in you." He shifted and charged, a massive black wolf with jaws like a bear trap. Alara didn't run. She pressed her hands to the ground and pulled. The roots responded instantly, exploding from the earth like serpents. They wrapped around Darius mid-leap, yanking him from the air and slamming him into the ground hard enough to crack stone. He snarled and thrashed, but Alara poured more power into the roots, making them grow thicker, stronger, thorns erupting along their length. "You think I'm weak because I'm human-raised?" Alara's voice shook with fury and power. "You think the Thornborn were weak? We made the peace you've enjoyed for generations. We bridged worlds you were too proud to cross." The roots tightened, and Darius yelped in pain. "We are the balance between civilization and wildness, and you're too blind to see that balance is what makes us strong." More wolves charged forward, trying to reach their leader, but Sarah and the Silvercrest warriors met them head-on, and the chamber exploded into full battle. Cale shifted and fought his way to Alara's side, his silver fur streaked with blood. Through their bond, she felt his fierce pride, his awe, his terror for her safety. Together, she thought at him, hoping he could hear. "We fight together." She felt his response, warm agreement, unshakable trust. Alara released Darius from the roots, but kept them coiled around the chamber like living barriers, separating his wolves from hers. Darius shifted back to human form, blood running from dozens of thorn punctures, his black eyes blazing with rage. "Impossible," he snarled. "Your power shouldn't be this strong." Not without completing the bond. Understanding dawned on his scarred face. "You're amplifying each other. The bond is deeper than I thought." "Because it's real," Alara said, Cale's warmth solid at her back. "Not forced, not political, real. That's what you'll never understand." Darius lunged again, but this time Cale met him. The two alphas collided with earth-shaking force, and Alara knew with cold certainty that only one would walk away. The chamber shook as the two most powerful shifters in 5 territories fought for dominance, for survival, for the future of their kind. And standing at the center of it all, commanding roots and vines with a power that grew stronger each moment, Alara finally understood what the prophecy meant: not unite or destroy. Unite and destroy. Unite the willing. Destroy the cruel.